Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share my full review, the digitally digested segment, for the VAIO SX14. The model I've been reviewing for the last month that you see here is the $2,200 model, which does have the UHD display, a 1TB NVMe, of course an Intel Whiskey Lake i7 CPU complemented by 16 gigs of RAM, a fingerprint scanner for security, and just about every I/O port that you could ever imagine, and of course a webcam. And right now it is fully at least opened up as far as the design permits you to bend the screen back. But let's go ahead and start off with the display because it is a bragging right. So let's go ahead and play this video. It's just a sample from my DJI Mavic 2 Pro. This is in UHD. And hopefully this video will do it justice because the display is gorgeous. I mean, when you think about that they were able to get a 14-inch display into the chassis of what originally would be an expectation of a 13.3-inch display, it is a feat, especially at its weight, which is only a little over 2 pounds. I think it's 2.3 and change. So this is an incredibly light machine, an incredibly powerful machine, but it does come at a relatively steep cost. Again, this build, $2,200 US. The SX14 in general starts at $1,299, so much more affordable if you're willing to give up this fantastic display, as well as, of course, the i7 and step down to an i5 and only have 8 as opposed to 16 gigs of RAM, and then a much smaller NVMe for internal storage. But that's not what the machine is all about. It's really about being the best of everything as far as I'm concerned, and not doing it in a way that will do anything other than attract customers. And by that I mean we have a professional looking piece of hardware here, unlike much of the competition, which in my opinion has ended up looking like Apple clones. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of manufacturers out there that do have identity, but they still gravitate towards what Apple pretty much set in place. VAIO, I respect because they've retained their own identity, and there is quite a bit of new engineering here, despite the fact that this machine does look a lot like previous models. Now, the 4K display is not without issue, however. I did reach out to my contact at VAIO who furnished me with this for review. I was not able to confirm what type of panel they've employed here, which again is fantastic. Matte finish, I really do like that. Often you're going to find high gloss, matte, again, great for just about everything. But there is some backlight bleeding, which some pinching at the base, which again is a very unique engineering design that they came up with in order to basically almost make this bezel-less, except for the top. And the top only has that bezel because that's where all of the radios are for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all of those things, so that essentially the performance is not crippled by where they could place it in body. That's my understanding. So that's why, if you're wondering why we've got this, forehead up at the top as opposed to what many have shifted to nearly bezel-less, I think VAIO's done a very good job at making this almost all display. But yes, there is some backlight bleed. Not sure that you're going to see it. I may power it down just to show you that. But as far as things are concerned, this is where I wanted to start. And this is streaming from YouTube over my Wi-Fi. So you can see we're not having any problems buffering, no Wi-Fi performance issues, no Bluetooth performance issues. And then this machine does have literally every I/O port that anyone could want, or not want for that matter. So that's why this really is not just a powerful and incredibly light machine, but also incredibly versatile, because you will never find yourself saying, did I bring this type of cable or this dongle or this adapter? Because you have everything. And I'll be going through that through the course of this video. But again, just a quick sample. The display is a bragging right, no question. And if you go 4K, I think it's worth it. No question about that at all. Now, 4K side, let's go ahead and stop this video. Some benchmarking for those of you that are curious. In terms of graphics performance, we're working with the Intel 620 that's paired with the Whiskey Lake processor family. So you're not going to get anything amazing in the way of gaming performance. I think that's a given. That's not what this machine is designed for. You can see that it ranks right around where just about any notebook with integrated graphics would reside. Also bear in mind, this is an 8th gen, it is Whiskey Lake. 9th gen laptop chips are right around the corner. We don't know exactly when they're going to start hitting, but of course NVIDIA just started teasing product, so I don't think we're that far away. Now, with user benchmark, you can see that as far as it was concerned, I mean, that's a pretty good summary right there. For those of you that can't see what it's showing that, for gaming, 19%, it's a surfboard. But when it comes to desktop performance, UFO, 116%, and then workstation, 67%, which they're, of course, they're cute with their labels. You've got a battle cruiser. So it's letting you know that basically everything about this machine is strictly business. And it makes sense. That's who I believe VAIO is marketing this towards, and I think it's a really good fit because it has everything, and at an incredibly light weight. It's a no compromise. I mean, the fingerprint scanner is there for security measures. Yes, the trackpad could have been a little bit larger. It has quick charging. Granted, you do need to use their proprietary charging brick in order to utilize that, but you can charge this puppy up in, I think it's around an hour, a little bit less. Also, the keyboard, I've had a good experience with. It is spill resistant. Don't confuse that for waterproof for a moment, please. It has no IP rating. Another thing I confirmed, IPX with my VAIO contact. So the idea is that if you do spill liquid on here, clean it up. You've got basically a 3-minute window to dry this thing out. But the fact that it even has that resistance is a very good thing. And the chassis is a magnesium alloy, carbon fiber. So even though it is very lightweight, it does still, I would say it is still fairly resilient. And I did see, testing that this machine went through. Of course, I'm not going to test it myself, but it was very impressive what VAIO did to this machine to make sure that it could stand up and hold up to travel. And I won't call it rugged, but for its weight and how fragile it feels, it is. So there you see some benchmarks. I'm going to also pull up, well, I already showed you that. I wanted to share, let me see what else I have here. So in terms of the benchmark performance, you can see that i7 8565U, it performed, fairly well. You can see that 65.8%. The 620 integrated graphics, I mean, it is what it is. You can't expect much from that. You can see it is a Samsung 981 NVMe. That is, of course, an M.2. That is a 1 terabyte. That, of course, benched very well, as it should. And then the 16 gigs of RAM, as I mentioned, DDR3, it performed fairly well. A lot of people were wondering why we're not getting DDR4. I'm not going to get into that. Look at competing products. You'll see that the majority are right there with it. But they also give you, a variety of different games that you can play. And you can. I have tested this with gaming. You can see I have Steam installed. It can game. It's just don't expect much, and it really expect nothing at UHD. So again, the gaming is not why you would buy this system at all, because that's really not what this thing is all about. It's that simple. You're looking at a strictly business machine, and the fact that you've got a UHD display is a great thing because of all of the ports that are integrated, which I'm going to get to now. By the way, those of you wondering how good or bad the webcam is, it's acceptable. Nothing amazing. Let me close that out. Oh, it's not permitting me. Looks like I got logged out already. That's fine. So essentially what we're looking at here, and the pinching and the backlight bleed that I had was down here. For those of you that are wondering, you can't see it right now. I can always reboot the machine and then it will be visible. Maybe I'll do that. It may just be my unit because this, again, was a review unit. And when I spoke to the VAIO contact, he assured me that that is not par for the course on this display. But that is how I concluded that we're likely looking at IPS, because a VA panel wouldn't give us that glow. Now, let's get to what you can't see. And I already told you the keyboard works well, and it took me a little time to get accustomed to the size of the trackpad, but that certainly would not prevent me from recommending it. I mentioned the quick charge. I don't want to get all over the place. Battery life with the 4K model you're looking at here is roughly 6 hours. If you take it down to the non-UHD, the HD display, you're going to get up to 8-9 hours, and that's because you simply don't have the drain. And I'm pretty sure I have this on high performance. Like right now, it's at 83%, and it's estimating another 3.5 hours. So its biggest pitfall is battery life, but that is in part due to the 4K display. And that's really, I would say, its biggest shortcoming in 2019 is that VAIO got the design right. They've got all of the internals, all the I/O, which I'm going to show you right now. Actually, first, what I'll do is power it down so that you can at least see what I'm talking about with the bleed. I'll just do sleep, and hopefully when I wake it up, you'll just see the bleed that I've been referring to. Let's see, wake up. Okay, so I will have to actually power the system down completely. It wants to update, which I really don't want it to do. But battery life, I don't think really is a tremendous shortcoming in the scope of things, because, you know, here in 2019, yes, we would like to see more. But even though we'd like to see more, the reality is that there aren't many. I mean, Lenovo, the Carbon, yes, it competes with this. Do I think this is a nicer machine? Absolutely. Do I think that this has more I/O capability? Of course it does. In fact, I'm going to start to show that to you now rather than staring at this. So first and foremost, the design. You see the hinge right here? This was all done for thermals. So basically, not only does it make the system appear to be bezel-less because it's hiding this bezel underneath, but it's also elevating the machine. And yes, it can get hot, but for the most part, it did a very good job staying cool even under extreme stress tests. And for those of you wondering, I haven't mentioned yet, you know, running Adobe or any kind of video editing software, this machine absolutely can handle 4K video editing. Is it my first choice? No. But will it work for on the road? Absolutely. No question about it. I mean, with that processor on board, the additional cores, you've got a very powerful machine, even with it being a lower voltage chipset. It's Whiskey Lake. I mean, it is not a dated piece of hardware. And then in addition to that, you can see we've got 2 USB ports right here, a headphone jack. We also have, that's basically where all the ventilation is, you know, all the heat dissipation is going to be coming from. Nothing to show you on the bottom of the machine. Really nothing there. This is made in Japan, for those of you that are wondering. But when we come around to the right-hand side of the machine, that's where things get interesting, because all of a sudden, we are looking at something you just don't see, which is a full-size SD card slot. And yes, SD cards go in flush. This is one of the reasons I really like this machine, is that I can actually review my footage in 4K or review 42 megapixel stills at least as best as possible using this display on such a light machine. And if you notice, I'm not having a problem holding this for all of you because it's so light. You've got another USB Type 3 port, and then you can see next to that is your Type C port. Now, the Type C port cannot be utilized for an eGPU or anything like that. However, you can charge this machine using the Type C port. It's just not going to be anywhere near as fast as using Sony's included quick charger, is what I'm going to call it, even though it appears to be basically the same charger that that Sony has always used, even though this is now VAIO. Sony still does have ownership in this company, even though it's been spun off. So it looks like the VAIO of old charger, but again, that quick charge feature is really nice that this thing is able to charge up that quickly. I told you, roughly an hour, you're charged up. But with a power bank, something like that, it'll keep it going. But I think if my memory serves from the discussion that I had, because I didn't really use the power bank too much because of how convenient the quick charging was with the included charging brick, I think you drop off about 20%. It could be 30%, somewhere between 15 and 30% of the charging speed. You have an HDMI out, as you may have noticed. So what's really nice about this is that you can simultaneously, between that Type-C and the HDMI, you are able to display output to two 4K displays at 60 hertz. So that means that if you want to use this as a desktop type machine, dock it and connect it to a dual screen setup where you have, again, two 4K displays, this will output 4K from both of these ports at UHD. At 60 hertz. That is a very nice feature to have. I mean, so the Type-C port, very functional. It'll charge your devices. It will take a charge. But, the biggest part of having these two side by side is that dual 4K output at 60 hertz. So this really can transform into the desktop that you just saw in those benchmarks that it's registering, and that's because it is a very powerful machine. So you're somewhat future-proofed, even though those i9 chips are somewhere down the road this year. You do have a literal Ethernet jack, something you're not going to see on many machines, and then that is what you think it is. It's a VGA port. Now, do you really need a VGA port? No, I don't think anyone really needs one. But if you're ever in a situation, especially government buildings, things of that nature, schools that unfortunately don't have the financing to necessarily put in new projection systems, things of that nature, always good to have it rather and not need it than need it and not have it. So, VAIO has really gone out of their way to put everything under the sun. And that's what this, laptop truly is the king of, which is its I/O selection, which is basically everything that exists. And then portability. I mean, how light this machine is bonkers. This is the black version. It does come in several different colors. I didn't pick this. This is what was furnished to me. But if I was purchasing one, this is the color I would go with. I mean, we're looking at a pro model, in my opinion, something that, again, is not ostentatious, not gaudy. I don't need a head turner. I need something that is functional, portable, gets the job done. That's what this machine does. Let's power it up, and you'll probably see that backlight bleed now, and I think you can. So is it extreme? No. Should it be there at $2,200? No. But it could just be my sample. Again, when I discussed this with VAIO, I was assured that it was a one-off. So I take that to mean that, I'm not the first person to touch this unit. It is a review unit. So I would not be shocked if, someone may have mishandled it, because it does appear to be pinching. Again, these are made in Japan. Really the highest quality. I don't know of any other laptops made in Japan other than what I'm looking at here. And overall, again, the biggest pitfall of this machine, I think the two nitpicks that people are going to have really lies, as I try to close all this up, it really lies in two things. Battery life, number one, which I think is a legitimate argument to make against the machine. The battery life could have been better, but you have to remember the ergonomics of this, how thin and light this machine is. They didn't do this to make you upset. And the other thing that you need to, of course, I think the other thing that people are going to complain about is that trackpad. And I have to tell you, again, as I did earlier in the video, while I thought that was going to be an issue, the truth of the matter is that the trackpad really wasn't a big deal for me personally. And, browsing the web, I mean, I can do it, but there are no problems with this machine when it comes to browsing. Everything works well. No touch screen, for those of you wondering. You don't have any of that going on. But the trackpad works well. So even though it's small, and I could understand if you have gargantuan hands that it would be nice to have a larger trackpad, I don't see that as being a defining decision. You know that you want this machine if you want all of its specifications, all of its I/O ports, and a UHD display, because you aren't going to really find that anywhere else. Would I have liked a touchscreen? Sure. Does the average business user that VAIO is trying to market this to, the professional user, do they need a touchscreen? No, a touchscreen, is likely more of a gimmick, something that really is aimed at things like, the Surface Pro. And I'm not saying that's a gimmick, but it's a tablet. This is not a tablet. This is purely a laptop. That is its lineage. That is what VAIO has put forward with the SX14. They took what they already knew how to do, and they simply made it better. So again, biggest pitfalls, battery life, size of trackpad. I don't see that as being a reason not to pick one of these up. Audio performance, I didn't mention. The speakers are not, I'm glad she's going to jail. The speaker performance is not that fantastic, but what are you expecting from such a small profile machine? I mean, it has speakers. I don't recommend them. And basically, in an ideal world, I think any pro that picks up this machine is going to want to hook up a mouse. I think that's logical, but that's all you're going to need. That's the beauty, if you even need it. And of course, bring the charger. And if you don't, make sure you bring a power bank, like the 10,000 milliamp Samsung Type-C power bank that I unboxed a little while ago. That's pretty much a perfect match for this sort of machine. So I think VAIO did just about everything right here. I'm glad I got it into my hands. I'm glad I reviewed it. Again, video, photo editing, no problems. Gaming, this is not what you want. But if you are, interested in again, I don't know a machine that's this light that really has all of this capability. And I don't just mean the internals, because that you can find from other manufacturers, but all of the I/O. I mean, it's just bonkers. And then to have the UHD display, which, again, I'm calling IPS, even though the manufacturer isn't, I think is a great thing. Had they gone VA, I would have been a little bit disappointed, because there's just no reason. That to me is more of a cost-cutting measure. Of course, that depends on what you're going for, but this is, a custom display in that it's UHD 14 inches and fits in a chassis that traditionally, as I mentioned earlier in the video, would be 13 inches. And those of you who are going to be upset about CNN, I really do not care. I'll go to ESPN if that makes you happy. But web browsing on this is, perfectly fine. It's exactly what you'd expect. Everything's loading up instantaneously. Trackpad, function is good. So, I mean, what is there not to like? I already mentioned it. It's battery and the trackpad. Otherwise, solid machine. I absolutely think it's worth considering. I personally would love to get one. It's just a little bit too rich for my blood right now at $2,200. And these are the specs that I would personally want if I was going to purchase this today. I do think VAIO currently has a sale going on, so if you are interested, I will throw a link in the description. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button, and as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.